The words came out of my husband's mouth in perfect Japanese, and I felt my wine glass tremble in my hand. We were sitting in the private dining room of Matsuhisa, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. The soft lighting made the dark wood panels glow, and outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkled like scattered diamonds. Everything looked beautiful, elegant, perfect. But the words I was hearing made my stomach turn to ice. "She's quite stupid actually," Brandon said to Mr. Tanaka, laughing as he gestured toward me with his sake cup. "Beautiful, yes, but empty-headed. A good decoration for my arm at events, nothing more." Mr. Tanaka smiled politely, his expression neutral. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, wearing an impeccable gray suit. His company was considering a $50 million investment in Brandon's tech firm, and this dinner was supposed to seal the deal. I kept my face blank, taking a small sip of my wine. My heart pounded so hard I thought they might hear it. Brandon had no idea I spoke Japanese. He'd never bothered to ask about my college years, never looked at my transcripts, never questioned why I had a minor in East Asian studies alongside my business degree. To him, I was just the pretty woman he'd married 5 years ago, someone to look good in photographs and host dinner parties. "And your other woman?" Mr. Tanaka asked carefully, switching topics. "The one you mentioned before?" I forced myself to keep chewing the piece of tuna slowly, my expression pleasant and blank. Inside my mind was screaming. Brandon grinned. "Colette is everything Naomi isn't. Smart, ambitious, understands my business. We've been together for 2 years now. Naomi suspects nothing. 2 years. 2 entire years. Is that wise?" Mr. Tanaka asked. "If your wife discovers this." Brandon waved his hand dismissively. "She won't. And even if she did, what could she do? I had her sign a prenuptial agreement. She gets nothing if we divorce. She'd be back to being nobody, back to her little nothing life before me." I reached for my water glass, buying time to compose my face. The server appeared with the next course, and I smiled at him gracefully, thanking him in English. Brandon didn't even glance my way. He was too busy talking about me like I was a piece of furniture. "Besides," Brandon continued in Japanese, "Naomi is useful for appearances. My investors like that I have a stable home life, a beautiful wife. It makes me look trustworthy, settled. Once the business goes public, maybe I'll consider ending things with her. But for now, she serves her purpose." Mr. Tanaka's expression had shifted slightly. I caught a flicker of distaste in his eyes. Good. At least someone at this table had some sense of decency. "Your wife is lovely," Mr. Tanaka said neutrally. "Does she work?" "She volunteers at some charity," Brandon said, shrugging. "Plays at being important. Honestly, I stopped paying attention to what she does with her days years ago. The charity where I volunteered was actually a non-profit I'd helped build from the ground up. We provided business education and microloans to women starting their own companies. I'd been on the board of directors for 3 years. But Brandon had never once attended any of our events or asked about my work. He just handed me his credit card and told me to have fun with my little projects. I placed my chopsticks down carefully, precisely. My hands were steady now. The initial shock had passed, replaced by something cold and clear. Anger would come later, I knew. Right now, I felt almost detached, like I was watching this happen to someone else. The dinner continued for another hour. Brandon and Mr. Tanaka discussed business terms while I sat there, smiling when appropriate, nodding politely. Every few minutes, Brandon would make another comment in Japanese about how boring I must find business talk, how I was probably thinking about shopping or some other trivial thing. I let him think that. I smiled and looked at my phone occasionally, playing the role he'd assigned me perfectly. Meanwhile, my mind was working at top speed. 2 years. He'd been cheating for 2 years with Colette, his executive assistant. I knew Colette. She was a blonde woman in her late 20s, always dressed in tight skirts and expensive heels. She called our house sometimes, always with some urgent business matter that needed Brandon's immediate attention. I thought she was just overly dedicated to her job. How stupid I'd been. Or had I? No. I pushed that thought away. I wasn't stupid. I trusted my husband. There was a difference. The prenuptial agreement. Brandon thought that would protect him. He'd insisted on it before our wedding, and I'd signed it without much thought. I'd been 25 and in love, believing we'd be together forever. The agreement stated that in case of divorce, I would receive only $50,000 and no claim to his business or assets. $50,000. After 5 years of marriage to a billionaire. After 5 years of hosting his business associates, managing his household, supporting his career, putting my own ambitions on hold. But Brandon had forgotten something. Or maybe he'd never known it in the first place. That prenuptial agreement had a clause, one my father had insisted on including. My father had been a lawyer before he died, and he'd read every line of that document. If Brandon was unfaithful, the prenup became void. I just needed proof. Naomi, darling. Brandon's voice cut through my thoughts. He was speaking English now, his tone affectionate and condescending. We're going to have brandy in the lounge. Why don't you head home? You must be tired. Translation: he wanted to continue talking business without me around. Or maybe he wanted to say even more horrible things about me in Japanese. I smiled sweetly. Of course. I'm a bit tired. Mr. Tanaka, it was a pleasure meeting you. I stood, gathering my green clutch. I'd worn a green silk dress tonight, one that Brandon had once said made my brown skin look radiant. He probably didn't remember that now. Mr. Tanaka stood as well, bowing politely. The pleasure was mine, Mrs. Sterling. Sterling. Brandon's last name, which I'd taken so proudly 5 years ago. Soon I'd be Naomi Richardson again. I walked out of the restaurant with my head high, my heels clicking on the marble floor. The valet brought our car around quickly. I'd driven separately tonight because Brandon had said he might be late. How convenient for him. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. Home soon. Love you. I stared at those words. Love you. He just spent 2 hours telling a stranger how worthless I was, how stupid, how useless. And now he was texting me that he loved me. I didn't text back. Instead, I drove through the city streets, my mind perfectly clear now. The shock had burned away, leaving something sharp and focused behind. Brandon thought I was stupid. He thought I was helpless. He thought I had no options, no power, no intelligence. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to Simone's apartment across town. Simone had been my roommate in college, back when we'd both been studying business and dreaming about changing the world. She'd gone on to become a corporate attorney at one of the city's top firms, while I'd married Brandon and let my career aspirations fade into the background. Or so everyone thought. Simone opened the door in sweatpants and a Columbia Law hoodie, her dark brown hair pulled back in a messy bun. Naomi? What's wrong? It's almost 11. I walked inside, finally letting my composed mask slip. I need your help. And I need to tell you something I've never told anyone. We sat in her living room and I told her everything. About the dinner, about what Brandon had said in Japanese, about Colette, about the 2 years of lies. Simone's expression grew darker with every word. That absolute piece of trash. And he has no idea you speak Japanese? None. I studied it all through college. I spent a semester in Tokyo during junior year. But Brandon never asked about my education. He just assumed I was some sort of trophy wife with nothing in my head. Okay. Simone grabbed a notepad, her lawyer brain already working. First things first. The prenup. Do you have a copy? In our safe at home. But I remember what it says. 50,000 if we divorce unless he's unfaithful. Then it's void and I'm entitled to half of everything. We need that document. We also need proof of the affair. Do you have access to his phone, his computer, anything? I nodded slowly. I have his passwords. He made me memorize them years ago in case of emergencies. He never changed them because he never thought I'd use them for anything. Simone leaned forward. Naomi, I'm going to be straight with you. If we do this, we do it right. We need documentation of everything. Financial records, communication between him and Colette, anything that proves the affair. Can you do that without him knowing? Yes. The word came out strong and certain. I can do it. Good. Tomorrow I'm connecting you with someone. Her name is Patricia Chin. Wait, no. Simone paused. Sorry, I just realized you said you didn't want that name. Let me think. Her name is Patricia. She's the best divorce attorney in the state. She's ruthless, she's brilliant, and she doesn't lose. We talked until almost 2 in the morning, creating a plan. By the time I left Simone's apartment, I had a clear roadmap of what needed to happen next. I drove home slowly, my mind turning over every detail. The house was dark when I arrived. A massive modern structure in the hills with glass walls and infinity pools. Brandon had bought it 3 years ago, saying it would be perfect for entertaining clients. I'd spent months decorating it, choosing every piece of furniture, every painting. Now it just felt empty and cold. Brandon's car wasn't in the garage yet. I went inside, kicked off my heels and headed straight for his study. My hands didn't shake as I opened his laptop. The password was the same as it had always been. His birthday. His email was open. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of everything. Emails to Colette, dozens of them. Can't wait to see you tonight. She'll be at her charity thing all afternoon. Only thinking about you. My stomach twisted, but I kept photographing. I needed this. I found his calendar next. Meetings with Colette that happened during times he'd told me he was working late. Hotel reservations. Charges on his credit card for jewelry I'd never received. I created a new email account on my phone and sent everything to myself. Then I cleared the browser history on his laptop and closed it, leaving everything exactly as I'd found it. The safe was in our bedroom closet. Inside was the prenuptial agreement, our passports, some cash, and various documents. I photographed every page of the prenup, making sure the adultery clause was clearly visible. I was just putting everything back when I heard Brandon's car in the driveway. I moved quickly, closing the safe, returning to the bedroom. I changed into my nightgown and got into bed, turning off the light. My heart pounded as I heard him come up the stairs. He entered the bedroom quietly, probably trying not to wake me. I kept my breathing even and deep, pretending to be asleep. "Naomi," he whispered. I didn't respond. I heard him sigh, then the sound of him undressing. The bed shifted as he got in beside me. He put his hand on my shoulder and I had to fight not to pull away. "I love you," he murmured. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn over and tell him I knew everything, that I'd heard every word he'd said tonight. But I didn't. I just lay there, silent, planning. The next morning, I woke to find Brandon already gone. He'd left a note on his pillow: "Early meeting. See you tonight. B." I got up and made coffee, going through the motions of my normal routine. I worked out in our home gym, showered, got dressed. I chose a blue blouse and black pants. Professional, capable. Then I sat down with my laptop and did what I'd been pretending not to know how to do for 5 years. I accessed our joint financial accounts. I'd put $50,000 into Brandon's business when we first got married. It had been money from my father's life insurance policy, money I'd inherited after he died. Brandon had been grateful then, telling me I was investing in our future together. That $50,000 had been used as seed money for his tech company. The company was now worth hundreds of millions. I took screenshots of everything. The initial investment, the formation documents that listed me as an early investor, the current valuation. I sent it all to my new email address. Then I looked at our personal accounts. The checking account had $200,000 in it. Our savings had $500,000. There were investment accounts, stock portfolios, real estate holdings. I made notes of everything, creating a comprehensive picture of our finances. Brandon thought he'd kept me in the dark about money, but I'd been paying attention all along. I just never had a reason to act on that knowledge before. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mrs. Sterling? This is Patricia Wilson. Simone gave me your information. Do you have time to meet today?" Patricia Wilson. The divorce attorney. "Yes," I said. "I have time." Patricia Wilson's office was on the 45th floor of a gleaming skyscraper downtown. The reception area was all glass and steel, minimalist and expensive. A young man at the desk directed me to a conference room where Patricia was waiting. She was in her 50s, with silver hair cut and a sharp bob and intelligent gray eyes. She wore a red suit that practically screamed power and competence. When she shook my hand, her grip was firm. "Simone speaks very highly of you," Patricia said, gesturing for me to sit. "She also told me about your situation. I've reviewed the information you sent over this morning. Your husband has made some significant mistakes." I sat down, feeling nervous for the first time since the dinner. This was real now. What kind of mistakes? "The prenuptial agreement is poorly written," Patricia said, opening a folder on the table. "The adultery clause is very clear, and you have documentation of the affair. But more importantly, your initial investment in his company gives you a claim to a portion of the business." I thought prenups covered business assets? They do usually. But your investment predated the prenup by 3 months. And according to the formation documents, you were listed as a founding investor, not just a spouse providing support. That's legally significant. My heart started to beat faster. "So what does that mean?" Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying me. "It means you have leverage. With the adultery documented, the prenup is void. You're entitled to half of all marital assets acquired during your marriage. But the business investment is separate. That's yours by right regardless of the marriage. How much would that be worth? Based on current valuations? Approximately $40 million. The room seemed to tilt. $40 million? Your $50,000 investment, plus growth over 5 years with your ownership stake properly calculated. Yes. Patricia pulled out another document. But here's where it gets interesting. Your husband's company is planning to go public in 6 months. If we time this correctly, your stake becomes even more valuable. I tried to process this. I don't understand. Why wouldn't we move now? Because right now, your stake is tied up in a private company. The valuation is good, but the liquidity is limited. Once the company goes public, your shares become easily tradable. More importantly, if we file for divorce now, your husband will try to hide assets, move money, undervalue the company. If we wait until just after the IPO, everything is public record. He can't hide anything. But that's 6 months away. I'd have to pretend everything is fine for 6 more months. Patricia nodded. I know it's asking a lot. But Naomi, we're talking about the difference between getting 40 million and getting maybe 10 or 15. He'll fight us on the valuation. He'll claim the company isn't worth what we say it is. But once it's public, the market decides the value. There's no arguing with that. I thought about sitting across from Brandon at dinner every night for 6 more months. Pretending I didn't know about Colette. Smiling and playing the perfect wife while he lied to my face. But then I thought about walking away with enough money to never have to depend on anyone again. Enough money to build something of my own, to live life on my terms. What do I need to do? Patricia smiled. First, we secure everything. We're going to set up accounts in your name only. You'll start moving money there slowly, legally. Joint account funds that you have every right to access. Nothing that raises red flags, but enough that you have resources when the time comes. Won't he notice? Not if we're careful. You'll tell him you're making investments for charity donations or home improvements or any number of things. Men like your husband don't usually pay attention to household expenses. She was right. Brandon gave me access to the joint accounts and never looked at how I spent the money. He just assumed it went to clothes and salon visits. Second, Patricia continued, we continue gathering evidence. I want everything documented. Every lie, every late night, every interaction with Colette. Keep a journal. Write down dates, times, what he told you versus where he actually was. The more we have, the stronger our position. And third, you start building your exit strategy. Where will you live? What will you do? This isn't just about the divorce, Naomi. This is about building a new life. I want you thinking about that, planning for it. Because in 6 months, when we file those papers, everything changes instantly. You need to be ready. We spent the next 2 hours going over details. Patricia had brought in a forensic accountant who explained how to document everything, how to trace money flows, how to protect myself legally while gathering information. By the time I left the office, it was late afternoon. I felt energized in a way I hadn't felt in years. I had a plan. I had a goal. I wasn't helpless. I drove to the nonprofit where I volunteered. Our offices were in a converted warehouse in a revitalized part of the city. Inside, 3 of my colleagues were working on grant applications. Naomi. Jennifer, our program director, looked up from her computer. Perfect timing. We need your input on the new curriculum proposal. I spent the next few hours doing actual work, using my brain, contributing something meaningful. It felt good. It felt real. Jennifer walked me out when the office closed. You seem different today, she said. More focused or something. I've been thinking about the future, I said. About what I really want to do with my life. Well, whatever it is, I hope it involves staying with us. You're one of the best board members we have. Your financial planning workshops have been incredible. I've been teaching financial literacy to the women in our program. Budgeting, investing, understanding credit. All the things I knew but had stopped using in my own life. I'm not going anywhere, I told Jennifer. And I meant it. This place, this work was mine. Brandon had never touched it, never been involved. It was the one part of my life that was completely separate from him. I drove home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Brandon's car was already in the garage. I took a deep breath before going inside. He was in the living room on his phone, frowning at something on the screen. He looked up when I entered. There you are. Where have you been? The nonprofit. We had a board meeting. The lie came easily. Oh, right. He'd already lost interest looking back at his phone. I ordered Thai food for dinner. It should be here soon. Sounds good. I'm going to change. I went upstairs and stood in our closet looking at all my clothes. Beautiful dresses, designer shoes, expensive handbags. All bought with Brandon's money, all chosen to make me look the way he wanted me to look. In 6 months, none of this would matter. In 6 months, I'd have my own money, my own life, my own choices. I changed into comfortable clothes and went back downstairs. Brandon was still on his phone. We ate dinner mostly in silence, him checking his messages constantly, me pretending not to notice. I might be late tomorrow, he said eventually. Big meeting with investors. Okay. You don't mind? I smiled at him. Of course not. Your work is important. He seemed satisfied with that answer. After dinner, he disappeared into his study. I heard him on the phone, his voice low and intimate. Talking to Colette, probably. I sat in the living room with my laptop, researching business opportunities. Ideas I'd had years ago, projects I'd wanted to start but had put aside. I made lists, created budgets, sketched out plans. 6 months. I just had to make it 6 months. The next 3 weeks fell into a pattern. During the day I played the perfect wife. I went to charity events, had lunch with the wives of Brandon's business associates, managed the household. At night, while Brandon worked late or disappeared to be with Colette, I documented everything and built my case. I also started moving money. Patricia had set up several accounts in my name. Every few days, I'd transfer funds from our joint accounts. 10,000 here, 15,000 there. I categorized them as donations to the nonprofit, home improvement expenses, personal investments. All perfectly legal, all within my rights as a joint account holder. Brandon never noticed. He barely looked at the account statements. I also started paying more attention to his business. Brandon's company, Secretℹ Solutions, specialized in cybersecurity software. It had contracts with major corporations and was indeed preparing for an IPO. The business news sites were full of speculation about how successful the offering would be. What they didn't know was that Secretℹ Solutions had some problems. I discovered this by accident. One evening, Brandon left his laptop open in the study when he went to take a call. I glanced at the screen and saw an email chain with his chief financial officer. They were discussing some irregularities in the quarterly reports, something about inflated projections. I read quickly, my heart racing. They were making the company look more profitable than it actually was, trying to drive up the IPO valuation. It wasn't quite fraud, but it was definitely questionable. I took photos of everything with my phone. Later, I sent them to Patricia with a note. Is this useful? She called me within an hour. Naomi, this is exactly what we need. If they're manipulating financial data, the SEC will be very interested. But more importantly, it gives us leverage. We can threaten to expose this unless he agrees to a fair settlement. Isn't that blackmail? It's negotiation. And it's completely legal. We're not asking for anything you're not entitled to. We're just ensuring he doesn't try to fight us. I felt a flicker of something that might have been guilt. But then I remembered Brandon at that dinner, calling me stupid, calling me worthless. The guilt disappeared. There's something else, I told Patricia. His assistant, Colette. I've been watching her. She has access to company accounts, right? What if she's been stealing? What makes you think that? Just a feeling. She's always wearing expensive jewelry, driving a new car. Brandon pays her well, but not that well. I'll have our forensic accountant look into it. If she's embezzling, that's another layer of protection for you. Your husband won't want any of this coming out during the divorce. After I hung up with Patricia, I sat in the study thinking. Brandon had created this situation. He'd lied, cheated, treated me like I was nothing. Now his own actions were going to take him down. My phone buzzed. A text from Simone. Drinks tomorrow? You need a break. I smiled. Yes, definitely. The next evening, Simone and I met at a rooftop bar downtown. It was one of those trendy places with craft cocktails and a view of the city lights. I wore a maroon dress I'd bought years ago but rarely had occasion to wear. Brandon always wanted me in neutral colors at his business events. You look amazing, Simone said when I arrived. She was wearing jeans and a green blouse, her hair down around her shoulders. Seriously, you're glowing. I feel good, I admitted. I know that's weird, considering everything, but I feel more like myself than I have in years. We ordered drinks and sat at a table by the railing, the city spread out below us. So how's the plan going? Simone asked. Good. Really good, actually. Patricia is incredible. We've moved almost 200,000 into my accounts, all legally documented. And I found some information about Brandon's company that might be useful. I told her about the financial irregularities, the inflated projections. Simone whistled low. Wow. He really is an idiot, isn't he? Doing all this right before an IPO? He thinks he's untouchable. He thinks everyone around him is too stupid to notice what he's doing. Including you. Especially me. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. It felt good to just be myself, to laugh without pretending. I realized how much I'd isolated myself during my marriage. Brandon hadn't liked me having close friends. He'd wanted me available for his schedule, his needs. Well, those days were ending. When I got home that night, Brandon was in bed, already asleep. I looked at him in the dim light from the hallway. He looked peaceful, unworried. He had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I had a meeting at the nonprofit. We were interviewing candidates for a new program coordinator position. One of the applicants was a woman named Tasha who had recently left a corporate job to focus on community work. "I spent 10 years climbing the ladder," Tasha said during her interview. "Making good money, getting promotions. But I was miserable. I was building someone else's dream, not my own. So I decided to change that." Her words resonated with me. I'd been building Brandon's dream, supporting his vision. What about my dreams? After the interviews, I stayed late in the office, working on a project I'd been thinking about for weeks. A business plan for a consulting company. I'd help other companies improve their diversity and inclusion practices, using my business degree and my experience. I had the skills, the knowledge, the connections. I just needed the capital to start. In 6 months, I'd have that capital. I worked until late, refining my ideas, creating projections. This was going to work. I could feel it. When I finally went home, it was almost midnight. Brandon's car wasn't in the garage. Out with Colette, probably. I went inside and poured myself a glass of wine. Then I sat at the kitchen counter and opened my laptop. I had an email from Patricia's forensic accountant. "Mrs. Sterling, you were right to be suspicious. Colette Winters has been systematically embezzling from Sterling Tech Solutions for approximately 18 months. I've found evidence of false expense reports, diverted payments, and unauthorized wire transfers totaling approximately $600,000. This information has been compiled into a full report. Please advise on how you'd like to proceed." I read the email twice, then 3 times. $600,000. Colette had been stealing from Brandon's company while having an affair with him. It was almost funny. I forwarded the email to Patricia with a note. "What do we do with this?" Her response came quickly. "We sit on it for now. Let her keep digging herself deeper. When the time comes, we'll have everything we need." I closed my laptop and finished my wine. Everything was falling into place. Brandon thought he was so smart, so careful. But he'd surrounded himself with people who were using him, lying to him, stealing from him. And he had no idea. I went to bed that night feeling something close to satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about justice. It was about taking back what was mine and building something better. Brandon came home around 2 in the morning. I heard him stumble into the bedroom, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. He got into bed beside me and I kept my breathing even, pretending to be asleep. In the darkness, I smiled. I saw Colette 3 days later at a charity gala. It was one of those events Brandon always insisted I attend, full of wealthy people pretending to care about causes while really just networking. This particular gala was for children's literacy, held in a grand hotel ballroom with crystal chandeliers and elaborate floral arrangements. I wore a red gown that made my dark skin look radiant. I'd had my hair done in elegant curls that fell past my shoulders. I looked beautiful and I knew it. More importantly, I felt powerful. Brandon was across the room talking to potential investors. Colette stood beside him, wearing a tight blue cocktail dress and holding a tablet. She was supposedly there in her capacity as his assistant, but the way she looked at him told a different story. I watched them for a moment. Brandon said something and Colette laughed, touching his arm. It was subtle enough that most people probably wouldn't notice. But I noticed everything now. I made my way through the crowd, accepting compliments on my dress, chatting with people I knew. I was working my way toward them when someone grabbed my arm. Naomi Sterling. Just the woman I wanted to see. It was Gerald Patterson, the CEO of one of Brandon's biggest clients. He was in his 60s with white hair and a friendly smile. "Gerald, how nice to see you. I wanted to thank you personally. That connection you made for us with the nonprofit you work with? It's been wonderful. We've partnered with them for our employee volunteer program, and the feedback has been outstanding." I'd almost forgotten about that. 6 months ago, I'd introduced Gerald's company to our nonprofit. It had resulted in a major corporate sponsorship and volunteer support. "I'm so glad it's working well," I said. "Your husband is a lucky man. Beauty and brains." Gerald smiled warmly. "Say, I've been meaning to ask. Have you ever considered consulting work? We're looking for someone to help us develop our community investment strategy. You'd be perfect." My heart skipped. That's very flattering. "I'm serious. Think about it. Give me a call if you're interested." He handed me his business card. I slipped it into my clutch, my mind racing. This was exactly the kind of opportunity I'd been hoping for. A foot in the door, a way to start building my own career. I'll definitely think about it, I said. After Gerald moved on, I continued toward Brandon and Colette. They didn't see me approaching. Brandon was checking his phone and Colette was standing close to him, her hand on his back. Brandon, I said sweetly. There you are. Colette jumped slightly, stepping away. Brandon looked up from his phone, his expression shifting to mild annoyance before settling into a smile. Darling, I thought you were talking to the Henderson couple. I was, but I wanted to check in with you. I turned to Colette. And hello, Colette. You look lovely tonight. Colette's smile was brittle. Thank you, Mrs. Sterling. So do you. Up close, I could see the strain in her face. She looked tired despite the makeup. There were dark circles under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide. Is everything all right? I asked, all concern. You look a bit pale. I'm fine. Just been working long hours. You really should take better care of yourself. All work and no rest can't be good for you. Brandon interrupted. Colette is dedicated to the company. I'm lucky to have her. I'm sure you are. I smiled at both of them. Well, I'll let you get back to work. I'm going to get some air. I walked away, feeling their eyes on my back. Let them wonder what I meant by that comment. Let them feel a little bit of discomfort. Outside on the terrace, the night air was cool and fresh. A few other people stood around, smoking or taking a break from the noise inside. I found a quiet corner and pulled out my phone. I had an email from Patricia's forensic accountant with an updated report on Colette's embezzlement. The amount had grown to nearly $700,000 now. She was getting bolder, taking larger amounts. I saved the report to my encrypted cloud storage. Every piece of evidence carefully documented and saved. Mrs. Sterling? I turned to find Mr. Tanaka standing a few feet away. I hadn't seen him since that dinner weeks ago, the dinner where my life had changed. Mr. Tanaka. What a surprise. He bowed slightly. I hope I am not intruding. I wanted to speak with you if I may. My heart rate picked up, but I kept my expression pleasant. Of course. He moved closer, his voice low. That night at Matsuhisa. I have been troubled by it. Your husband's words about you, they were unkind. I studied his face. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully. I do not know if you speak Japanese, he continued. But if you do, I want you to know that I found his comments inappropriate. I have decided not to invest in his company. A man who speaks that way about his wife, who lives with such dishonesty, is not someone I wish to do business with. I felt a surge of gratitude toward this man. That's very principled of you. It is simply good business. Character matters. He paused. If you do speak Japanese, I hope you will forgive me for not speaking up during the dinner. I was surprised. I did not know how to respond in the moment. I looked at him for a long moment, then made a decision. Your concern is appreciated, Mr. Tanaka. And for what it's worth, I think character does matter. Very much. He seemed to understand what I wasn't saying directly. He bowed again. I wish you well, Mrs. Sterling. After he left, I stood alone on the terrace, thinking. Mr. Tanaka pulling his investment would hurt Brandon's pre-IPO momentum. Not enough to stop the company from going public, but enough to raise questions among other investors. Good. I went back inside and spent the rest of the evening networking. I talked to CEOs, board members, philanthropists. I collected business cards, made connections, laid groundwork for my future. People seemed genuinely interested in my ideas about community investment and corporate social responsibility. Brandon didn't notice. He was too busy with his own conversations, with Colette always hovering nearby. We drove home separately again that night. When I pulled into the garage, Brandon's car was already there. I found him in the bedroom loosening his tie. Good evening? He asked, not really paying attention. Very good, actually. I made some interesting connections. That's nice. He wasn't listening. He never listened. I changed into my nightgown and got into bed. Brandon joined me a few minutes later, already scrolling through his phone. Brandon? I said. Do you ever think about the future? About what we want from life? He glanced at me, confused by the question. What do you mean? Just, are you happy? With how things are? Of course. Why wouldn't I be? He turned back to his phone. The IPO is going to make us very wealthy. Everything is going according to plan. His plan. Not our plan. That's good, I said softly. I'm glad everything is working out for you. He didn't hear the edge in my voice. He never heard anything beyond his own thoughts. I turned off my light and lay in the darkness, listening to him tap on his phone. Probably texting Colette. Planning their next meeting. living his double life without a care in the world. 4.5 months left. That's all. Just 4.5 more months of this and then I'd be free. The moment came sooner than I expected. It was a Thursday evening in late spring. Brandon had another dinner with Japanese clients, this time at the same restaurant where everything had started. He'd casually mentioned it that morning, saying I should join him to make a good impression. I'd agreed, of course. I'd been waiting for this. I wore a green dress this time, elegant and sophisticated. My hair was styled perfectly, my makeup flawless. I looked like the trophy wife Brandon thought I was. But inside I felt like steel. The clients were different this time. Mr. Takahashi and Ms. Sato, representatives from a major tech firm in Tokyo. They were considering a partnership with Sterling Tech Solutions pending the IPO. We met at the restaurant and Brandon was already there, sitting at a private table with the clients. I approached with a smile. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. Brandon stood to greet me, kissing my cheek for show. Darling, you remember how to greet our guests, right? He thought I'd just shake their hands. Instead, I bowed properly and said in perfect Japanese, Good evening. It's an honor to meet you both. I hope your trip to our city has been pleasant. The shock on Brandon's face was almost worth everything I'd been through. His mouth actually fell open. Mr. Takahashi and Ms. Sato looked delighted. They responded in Japanese, welcoming me and complimenting my language skills. Brandon had gone pale. He recovered quickly, forcing a smile. I didn't know you spoke Japanese. You never asked, I said sweetly, switching back to English. Shall we sit? Dinner was extraordinary. I conversed easily with the clients in both Japanese and English, discussing business, culture, and potential partnerships. I was charming, knowledgeable, and professional. Everything Brandon had claimed I wasn't. At one point, Ms. Sato turned to me and said in Japanese, Your husband is very fortunate to have a wife so accomplished. Does she work in the business as well? Before Brandon could answer, I responded. I run a nonprofit that helps women entrepreneurs. I also do consulting work on corporate social responsibility. I've been considering expanding into helping companies bridge cultural gaps in international business. That sounds fascinating, Mr. Takahashi said. Perhaps we should discuss this further. Our company has been looking for consultants with exactly that kind of expertise. Brandon looked like he wanted to interrupt, but he couldn't without being rude. I exchanged business cards with both clients, smiling graciously. The dinner continued, and I made sure to subtly undermine Brandon at every turn. When he tried to oversell his company's capabilities, I'd gently redirect with more realistic assessments. When he made promises that sounded too good to be true, I'd add caveats in Japanese that made the clients think twice. I wasn't sabotaging him exactly. I was just being honest. Something he'd never been with me. As dessert arrived, Brandon excused himself to take a phone call. The moment he left the table, Miss Sato leaned toward me. Mrs. Sterling, she said quietly in Japanese. I hope this is not too forward, but is everything well with you? I met her eyes. She was a sharp woman, probably in her 40s, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Why do you ask? I replied in Japanese. Your husband seems surprised by you. As if he doesn't know you very well. That seems strange for a marriage. I made a decision in that moment. My husband has underestimated me for a long time. He's about to learn otherwise. Mr. Takahashi and Miss Sato exchanged glances. Then Mr. Takahashi said, If you do start your consulting business, please contact us. I think we would prefer to work with you rather than your husband's company. Brandon returned then and we finished dessert with pleasant small talk. When we said our goodbyes, the clients bowed to me with genuine respect. To Brandon they were merely polite. In the parking lot, Brandon grabbed my arm. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop me. What the hell was that? He hissed. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. Take your hand off me. You made me look like an idiot in there. Since when do you speak Japanese? Since when do you know anything about my business? I've always spoken Japanese. I majored in business. I've always known about these things. You just never bothered to notice. I pulled my arm free. You never bothered to know anything about me at all. That's not fair. I've given you everything. This house, this life, everything you have is because of me. Everything I have? I laughed and it was a bitter sound. Brandon, I've heard what you really think of me. I've heard every word. His face went from red to white in an instant. What are you talking about? Matsuhisa. 2 months ago. You and Mr. Tanaka. You spoke about me in Japanese, thinking I wouldn't understand. You called me stupid. You told him about Colette. You said I was just decoration, nothing more. Brandon's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. I heard everything, I continued, my voice deadly calm. Every insult. Every lie. Every disgusting thing you said about me. And I've been planning ever since. Naomi, listen. I can explain. I was just trying to seem impressive to a client. I didn't mean any of it. You meant every word. And you know what? It doesn't matter anymore. I'm done. Done? What does that mean? I smiled at him, and it wasn't a nice smile. It means I want a divorce. It means I'm leaving you. It means your perfect little setup is about to fall apart. You can't divorce me. The prenup says you get nothing. The prenup is void. Adultery clause, remember? And I have documentation of your affair with Colette. Emails, texts, hotel receipts. All of it. Brandon's face cycled through several emotions. Shock, anger, fear. You've been spying on me? I've been paying attention. Something you should have tried doing in the last 5 years. This is insane. You're being ridiculous. So I made some comments and had a fling. That's what successful men do. You knew what you were getting into when you married me. No, Brandon. I thought I was marrying someone who loved me. Someone who respected me. I was wrong. And now I'm correcting that mistake. I walked toward my car. Brandon followed. Naomi, wait. Let's talk about this. We can work it out. I'll end things with Colette. We can start over. I don't want to start over. I don't want to be married to you. I don't want any part of this life anymore. Think about what you're giving up. The money, the status, the lifestyle. I'm not giving up anything. I'm taking back my life. And by the way, I'm also taking back my investment in your company. My lawyers calculate that's worth about $40 million now, plus half of our marital assets. The prenup might have protected you from that, but since it's void, I'm entitled to everything the law allows. Brandon's face went from pale to gray. 40 million? You can't? That would destroy the company. The IPO. Should have thought of that before you cheated on me. Before you insulted me. Before you treated me like I was worthless. I got into my car. Brandon stood in the parking lot, looking like his world was collapsing. Good. Now he knew how it felt. I drove away without looking back. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to a hotel downtown, a nice one where I'd already reserved a suite under my maiden name. I'd packed a bag days ago, hidden in my car trunk, ready for this moment. The suite was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city, a king-size bed, a sitting area with a couch and desk. My own space where no memories of Brandon existed. I ordered room service and called Patricia. It's done, I told her. I confronted him. How did he take it? About as well as you'd expect. He tried to deny everything, then tried to minimize it, then tried to buy me off. I told him about the 40 million. Patricia laughed. I bet that went over well. Okay, here's what happens next. I'm filing the divorce papers first thing tomorrow morning. We're going to move fast before he has a chance to hide assets or prepare a defense. Are you ready for this? More than ready. Good. Expect him to fight back. Expect him to try to make you look bad, to claim you're being vindictive or unreasonable. Don't engage. Don't respond to his calls or texts. All communication goes through me now. Understood. One more thing. The information about Colette's embezzlement? I think it's time to use it. I'm going to send the evidence to the Sterling Tech Solutions Board of Directors. They need to know they have a thief in their organization. Will that affect Brandon? Probably. He'll look negligent at best, complicit at worst. Either way, it's going to raise serious questions right before the IPO. The board might delay the offering until this gets sorted out. I thought about that. If the IPO got delayed, my 40 million might not materialize as quickly. But Brandon would suffer more in the long run. Do it, I said. After I hung up with Patricia, I sat by the window looking out at the city lights. My phone started buzzing. Text messages from Brandon. We need to talk. This is crazy. You're being irrational. I know you're upset, but we can fix this. Naomi, please. Just come home so we can discuss this like adults. I blocked his number. More texts came through from numbers I didn't recognize. Brandon must have been using other phones. I blocked those too. Finally, silence. I took a long shower and got into bed. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The next morning, I woke to dozens of missed calls. I ignored all of them and went down to the hotel restaurant for breakfast. I was finishing my coffee when Simone arrived. You did it, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Patricia called me. How do you feel? Free, I said. And I meant it. Brandon's been calling me. I told him to stop contacting me and go through his lawyer like everyone else. Thank you. The divorce papers were filed an hour ago. According to Patricia, Brandon's been served. She says he's refusing to accept them, claiming this is all a misunderstanding. Of course he is. Simone grinned. It gets better. The Secretℹ Solutions board received the information about Colette this morning. She was fired within 2 hours. And they're launching an internal investigation. Brandon is being questioned about how he didn't notice hundreds of thousands of dollars going missing. I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Not revenge exactly. Just consequences. People facing the results of their own actions. What happens now? I asked. Now you live your life. You've already started moving forward. Gerald Patterson called Patricia's office this morning, by the way. He wants to hire you officially as a consultant. Seems your conversation at the gala impressed him. Really? Really? He's offering a 6-month contract with an option to extend. It's good money, and it would give you a solid foundation to build your own consulting business. Things were moving fast. Faster than I'd expected. But I was ready. I spent the rest of the day working from the hotel suite. I called Gerald Patterson and accepted his offer. I had meetings with 2 other potential clients who'd heard about me through networking. I worked on my business plan, refined my pitch, prepared proposals. By evening, I'd laid the groundwork for an entire new career. Patricia called around 6. Update. Brandon's lawyer is trying to fight the divorce on grounds that you planned this, that you manipulated the situation. It's not going to work, but expect things to get messy. He's also trying to argue that your calculation of the business investment is inflated. Is it? Not even close. If anything, we've been conservative. The forensic accountant has documentation showing your $50,000 was critical seed funding. Without it, Secretℹ Solutions wouldn't exist. You're entitled to every penny we're claiming. And the IPO? Delayed. The board wants to sort out the embezzlement investigation first. They're also reviewing Brandon's financial statements more carefully. If they find the irregularities we found, there might be bigger problems. How is Brandon handling all this? According to sources, not well. He's been trying to reach you constantly. He showed up at your nonprofit today demanding to know where you were. Jennifer told him to leave or she'd call the police. I felt bad for putting Jennifer in that position. But also grateful she protected me. I'll call her and thank her. Do that. Oh, and one more thing. Mr. Tanaka's company issued a statement today. They're publicly declining to invest in Secretℹ Solutions, citing concerns about corporate ethics and leadership. Other potential investors are starting to ask questions. Brandon's perfect world was crumbling. The IPO he'd been counting on was in jeopardy. His reputation was damaged. His mistress had been exposed as a thief. And his wife had turned out to be far more capable than he'd ever imagined. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of thinking about Brandon, tired of this whole situation. I wanted to move forward. I wanted to focus on building something new, something mine. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, business planning, and starting fresh. Brandon tried everything to stop the divorce. He claimed I'd tricked him, that I'd been planning this all along, that I wasn't entitled to the money I was claiming. His lawyers were aggressive, throwing up every obstacle they could think of. But Patricia was better. She countered every argument with documentation, evidence, and irrefutable logic. The prenup was void due to adultery. My investment in his company was documented and dated. The division of marital assets was standard procedure. The judge wasn't impressed with Brandon's tactics. At one hearing, after Brandon's lawyer tried to claim I was an opportunist who'd manipulated the situation, the judge said dryly, "Counsel, your client cheated on his wife, insulted her publicly, and failed to notice an employee stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from his company. I'm not inclined to view him as the victim here." Brandon's face had gone red with anger and humiliation. Through it all, I focused on my work. The consulting job with Gerald's company went well. I helped them develop a comprehensive community investment strategy that got positive media attention. Other companies started calling, wanting similar help. I moved into a beautiful penthouse apartment with huge windows and modern furniture. I decorated it in bright colors, blue and green and red, colors that made me happy. There was no trace of the neutral, boring elegance Brandon had preferred. I reconnected with old friends from college, people I'd lost touch with during my marriage. I went to dinners and movies and art galleries. I remembered what it felt like to just enjoy life without constantly worrying about appearances or whether my husband approved. 3 months after I'd confronted Brandon, the divorce was finalized. The judge ruled in my favor on every point. I got my 40 million from the business investment. I got half of our marital assets, which amounted to another 15 million. I got my freedom. Brandon walked out of the courthouse looking defeated. I felt nothing looking at him. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just nothing. He was a stranger now. Someone I used to know. 6 months after the divorce, I stood in my new office looking at the view. 23rd floor, corner office, my name on the door. Richardson Consulting Group had officially launched. I'd hired 3 employees so far. Tasha, who I'd interviewed at the nonprofit and who turned out to be brilliant at operations. 2 consultants with expertise in different industries. We were small but growing fast. My phone rang. Simone's number. "How's your first day in the new office?" she asked. "Surreal. Good surreal but surreal. You've earned it. Speaking of which, did you see the business news this morning?" "No, why?" Sterling Tech Solutions finally had their IPO. It went, not great. The stock opened below projections and dropped further by end of day. Analysts are citing concerns about leadership and financial oversight. I felt a small pang. Not for Brandon, but for the employees who'd worked hard and didn't deserve to suffer because of his mistakes. "That's unfortunate for the employees," I said. "Brandon's going to lose a lot of money. The stock was supposed to make him even richer, but instead he's probably going to lose his position as CEO. The board is reportedly looking for a replacement." Good. Maybe someone competent can fix things. After I hung up with Simone, I sat at my desk and looked at my calendar. Meeting with a potential client in an hour. Strategy session with my team after lunch. Dinner with Jennifer from the nonprofit to discuss a partnership. My life was full in a way it had never been during my marriage. Full of purpose, of challenge, of genuine connection with people who valued me. The meeting with the potential client went well. They were a mid-sized tech company wanting to improve their workplace culture and community engagement. I outlined a comprehensive strategy, answering their questions with confidence. They hired us on the spot. During the team meeting, Tasha presented an analysis of our first quarter projections. We were ahead of target. Way ahead. "If we keep this pace," she said, "we'll need to hire more people within 6 months." "Let's do it," I said. "I want to build something sustainable here. Something that grows the right way." After the meeting, I worked on a proposal for another potential client. This one was for a Japanese company expanding into the American market. My Japanese language skills and cultural knowledge would be essential. I was deep in thought when someone knocked on my office door. Jennifer from the nonprofit. "Sorry I'm early," she said. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd take a chance." "No problem. Come in." We went to dinner at a nearby restaurant, discussing plans for the nonprofit. I joined the board officially now, not just as a volunteer, and I wanted to expand our programs. "We've been so fortunate with the corporate partnerships you've brought in," Jennifer said. "Our budget has tripled in the last year. We're able to help 3 times as many women start businesses." That's what I wanted to hear. I've been thinking about creating a scholarship fund too. For women who want to pursue business education. That would be amazing. Do you have funding in mind? I'm going to fund it myself. Initial investment of 5 million with plans to grow it over time. Jennifer's eyes went wide. 5 million? Naomi, that's incredible. It's important to me. Education changed my life. I want to make sure other women have the same opportunities. We talked for hours, planning and dreaming. When I finally got home that night, I felt energized instead of tired. My penthouse was quiet and peaceful. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window looking out at the city. A year ago, I'd been sitting in a restaurant hearing my husband call me stupid in Japanese. I'd been trapped in a marriage built on lies, feeling worthless and small. Now I was building a business helping other women living on my own terms. The money from the divorce had given me security, but more importantly, it had given me freedom. Freedom to choose what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Mrs. Sterling? This is Mr. Takahashi. We met at that dinner several months ago." "Mr. Takahashi, yes. I remember. And it's Ms. Richardson now. Of course. Forgive me. I am calling because my company would like to hire your consulting firm. We are expanding our American operations and need someone who understands both business culture and can bridge the language gap. I'd be honored to discuss it. When would you like to meet?" "As soon as possible. This is a priority for us. We were impressed with you from that first meeting. You have a gift for seeing what others miss." We scheduled a meeting for the following week. After I hung up, I sat back, smiling. Brandon had tried to keep me small, to keep me quiet and decorative. Instead, his own actions had pushed me to discover my own strength. The irony was almost funny. The contract with Mr. Takahashi's company turned out to be the biggest opportunity yet. It was a year-long engagement worth several $1,000,000, helping them establish their U.S. headquarters and train their American employees in Japanese business practices. I hired 2 more consultants and an administrative assistant. Richardson Consulting Group was growing faster than I'd projected. One morning I was in my office when Tasha knocked on the door. "You have a visitor. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important." "Who is it?" "Brandon Sterling." I felt my stomach tighten. I hadn't seen or spoken to Brandon since the final divorce hearing. "Tell him I'm not available." I tried. "He says he'll wait." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to refuse to see him at all. But another part of me was curious. What could he possibly want now? Give me 5 minutes, then send him in. I used those 5 minutes to center myself. I looked at my reflection in the window. Professional blue suit, hair styled neatly, minimal jewelry. I looked successful because I was successful. When Brandon walked in, I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight and not in a good way. He looked haggard with dark circles under his eyes. His suit was rumpled. "Naomi, thank you for seeing me. You have 10 minutes? What do you want?" He sat down uninvited. "I wanted to talk. To apologize. I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past months and I realize I was wrong. About everything." "Is that so?" "I treated you terribly. I took you for granted. I was arrogant and stupid. I'm sorry." I studied him. He seemed sincere, but I didn't trust it. "Why are you here, Brandon?" "The divorce is final. There's nothing left to discuss. I want to make things right. I want us to try again." I actually laughed. "You cannot be serious." "I am. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. I miss you. I miss what we had. We never had anything real. You made sure of that. That's not fair. We had good years at the beginning. Did we? Or was I just too naive to see what was really happening?" Brandon leaned forward. "I made mistakes, but I've learned from them. The divorce, losing the business, everything that's happened. It's taught me what matters. And what matters is you." "No, Brandon. What matters is that you lost your money and your status. You don't miss me. You miss having someone to use." "That's not true. Naomi, please. Just give me a chance to show you I've changed." I stood up. "Your 10 minutes are up. I have actual work to do. The company is failing," he said suddenly. "Without you, without the stability of our marriage, investors lost confidence. The stock price is in the toilet. I'm probably going to lose my position as CEO. I'm losing everything. And you thought I'd feel sorry for you? That I'd rescue you? I thought you might understand. You know what it's like to build something, to work hard for success. Can't you see I need help?" I walked to the door and opened it. "I do understand what it's like to build something. That's why I'm building my own company now on my own terms. Your problems are not my responsibility. They never were. I'll pay you. As a consultant. Help me fix the company's reputation. I don't want your money. I have my own. And I don't work with people I don't respect." Brandon stood, anger flashing in his eyes. "You're really going to be like this? After everything I gave you? You gave me nothing. You took 5 years of my life and made me feel worthless. The only thing you gave me was a reason to fight for myself. This is about revenge, isn't it? You're still angry, so you want to watch me suffer." "No, Brandon. This isn't about revenge. It's about moving forward. You should try it sometime." He stared at me for a long moment, then walked out without another word. After he left, I stood at my window breathing deeply. My hands were shaking slightly, but I felt strong. I'd stood my ground. I hadn't given in to manipulation or guilt. Tasha appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm good. Can you make sure security knows not to let him up here again?" "Already done." Over the next few months, Richardson Consulting Group continued to grow. We moved to a larger office space. I hired more staff. We took on bigger clients, more complex projects. I also started speaking at conferences. Events about women in business, about entrepreneurship, about building success on your own terms. People responded to my story. Not the drama of the divorce, which I kept private, but the message of resilience and self-determination. "You left a comfortable life to build something of your own," one audience member said after a talk. "That takes courage." "It takes necessity," I replied. "Sometimes we don't change because we're brave. We change because staying the same is no longer possible." I started getting invited to more events, more speaking opportunities. My consulting business became secondary to my broader message about empowerment and business ethics. One day I got an email from a publisher. They wanted me to write a book about my experience building a business, about finding success after setbacks. I agreed not to tell my personal story, but to share practical advice for women who wanted to start their own companies. Life was full. Busy, challenging, rewarding. I woke up every day excited about what I was building. I went to bed every night satisfied with what I'd accomplished. A year after Brandon had shown up at my office, I got word that Sterling Tech Solutions had been sold. Brandon had been forced out as CEO, and the board had opted to sell the company rather than try to rebuild. He'd made some money from the sale, but not nearly what he would have made if the IPO had gone well. I felt nothing hearing the news. Not satisfaction, not pity. Just nothing. He was part of my past, a chapter that was closed. I was too busy writing new chapters to look back. 1 year and 8 months after the divorce, I stood in a ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton, wearing a stunning red gown. The Women in Business Awards ceremony was in full swing, and I was being honored as Entrepreneur of the Year. The ballroom was packed with successful women from across the country. CEOs, founders, innovators. Women who'd built empires and broken barriers. And somehow I was among them. Naomi Richardson started her consulting firm with a vision, the presenter said from the stage. To help companies not just succeed financially, but to build ethical, inclusive cultures that value all employees. In less than 2 years, Richardson Consulting Group has become one of the most respected firms in the industry. Her work has impacted thousands of employees and helped dozens of companies transform their operations. But perhaps most importantly, she's used her success to give back, establishing a $5 million scholarship fund for women pursuing business education. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Naomi Richardson. I walked to the stage, my heart pounding but my steps steady. The applause was overwhelming. I looked out at the audience, seeing Simone in the front row, tears in her eyes. Jennifer from the nonprofit was there too, along with my team from the consulting firm. I reached the podium and accepted the Crystal Award. It was heavy, substantial. Real. Thank you, I said, my voice carrying across the room. This honor means more to me than I can express. 2 years ago I was at a crossroads. I had to choose between staying in a situation that diminished me or taking a risk on myself. I chose myself. And that choice changed everything. I paused, looking at the faces watching me. Building this business hasn't been easy. There were moments of doubt, moments of fear. But I learned something important. We are capable of so much more than we think we are. Sometimes we just need a reason to discover that capability. I talked about the importance of mentorship, of women supporting other women. I talked about building businesses with integrity, about success that matters beyond just financial gain. I talked about the scholarship fund and why education had been so important to me. When I finished, the standing ovation lasted several minutes. People came up afterward, wanting to talk, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. Later, at the reception, I found myself standing by the window looking out at the city. The same city where I'd once felt so trapped, so small. Now it felt full of possibility. Congratulations. I turned to find Gerald Patterson, the CEO who'd first hired me as a consultant. He was smiling warmly. Thank you. And thank you for taking a chance on me when I was just starting out. I didn't take a chance. I recognized talent and competence when I saw it. You were always capable of this, Naomi. You just needed the opportunity to show it. He was right. I'd always had the skills, the intelligence, the drive. Brandon had just convinced me to hide those things, to make myself smaller so he could feel bigger. Never again. Simone joined us, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She handed me one. To success, she said. To freedom, I replied. We clinked glasses and drank. The champagne was perfect, crisp and cold and celebratory. Have you heard about Brandon? Simone asked. He's working for a small tech startup now. Middle management position. Nothing like what he had before. Good for him. I hope he's learned something from the experience. You're generous. I still want to punch him in the face. I laughed. He's not worth the energy. Besides, the best revenge is living well. And I'm living very well. The party continued late into the night. I talked with dozens of people, made new connections, explored new possibilities. Every conversation reminded me how far I'd come. When I finally got home, it was after midnight. I kicked off my heels and poured myself a glass of wine. Then I sat by my window, the award on the table beside me, and reflected on everything that had brought me to this moment. That dinner at Matsuhisa felt like a lifetime ago. The woman who'd sat there, pretending not to understand Japanese while her husband insulted her, seemed like a different person. In many ways she was. I'd been broken open that night. Everything I'd believed about my life, my marriage, my worth had shattered. But from those broken pieces I'd built something new. Something stronger, more authentic, more mine. Brandon had thought he was powerful, keeping me in the dark, treating me like I was nothing. But his arrogance had been his downfall. He'd underestimated me so completely that he'd never seen the threat until it was too late. And now I was successful beyond what I'd ever imagined during my marriage. I had a thriving business, genuine friendships, purpose and meaning in my work. I woke up every day excited about what I was building. Brandon, meanwhile, had lost almost everything. His company, his reputation, his wealth, his marriage. All because he'd chosen to lie and cheat and underestimate the woman who'd stood beside him. I didn't take joy in his downfall. But I didn't regret it either. He'd made his choices. He'd faced the consequences. That was justice, not revenge. My phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. Still can't believe you won. So proud to work with you. I smiled and texted back, couldn't have done it without the whole team. Thank you for everything. Another text, this one from Mr. Takahashi. Congratulations on your well-deserved award. Your company continues to impress us. We look forward to many more years of partnership. More texts came in from employees, clients, friends. People who valued me, who saw my worth, who wanted to celebrate my success. This was what mattered. Not the award itself, though that was wonderful. Not the revenge on Brandon, though there was a certain satisfaction in proving him wrong. What mattered was that I'd taken control of my own life. I'd refused to be diminished. I'd fought for myself when no one else would. I looked at my reflection in the window. A successful businesswoman in her early 30s, with her whole future ahead of her. No longer defined by who she was married to, but by what she'd built with her own hands, her own mind, her own determination. Brandon had tried to keep me small. Instead, he'd given me a reason to become extraordinary. And for that, in a twisted way, I was almost grateful. I raised my wine glass to my reflection. To new beginnings, I said aloud. To truth. To freedom. To me. The city sparkled below, full of lights and life and endless possibility. My city, my life, my future. And it was going to be amazing.
The flashbulbs erupted, blinding streaks of white against the opulent black and gold of the Fairmont Grand Ballroom. Isabella Thorne, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, clutched the heavy velvet curtain, a phantom pain twisting in her belly. Just beyond the shimmering barrier, a wave of applause swelled, echoing the exact moment her world shattered. Her husband, Richard Thorne, stood bathed in the spotlight, his arm wrapped possessively around a woman who was decidedly not his wife. It was Serena Vance, the rising starlet whose face graced billboards and magazine covers, now glowing beside her husband. Richard's smile, usually reserved and almost austere in public, was wide and unrestrained, a vibrant beacon of betrayal. Isabella, 6 months pregnant, and reeling from his casual announcement just last week that he needed space, felt the bitter bile rise in her throat. He hadn't just taken space. He had filled it with someone else, publicly, flagrantly. The roar of the crowd, the tinkling of champagne glasses, the saccharine music. It all blended into a deafening symphony of her humiliation. Isabella had spent the day in a haze, the doctor's appointment confirming her suspicions, the persistent nausea, the unusual cravings, the fluttering life within her. A baby. Richard's baby. She'd clutched the sonogram photo, a tiny, blurry promise, feeling a fragile hope bloom amidst the recent chill in their marriage. She had planned a romantic dinner, a quiet revelation, hoping the news would bridge the growing chasm between them. Instead, she'd walked into their sprawling suburban mansion, the scent of his expensive cologne lingering in the air, only to find a hastily scribbled note on the marble kitchen island. Isabella, I need some time alone. Don't worry, I'll be in touch. No explanation, no further details, just a cold, impersonal dismissal after 12 years of marriage. He hadn't even called. Hours later, scrolling through her phone, a society gossip site had caught her eye. Richard Thorne, tech mogul, steps out with actress Serena Vance at pre-gala event. The accompanying photo showed them laughing, Serena's hand delicately placed on his arm, her eyes sparkling with an intimacy Isabella hadn't seen in Richard for months. The space he needed wasn't solitude. It was a stage. Tonight was the annual Thorne Foundation Charity Gala, an event Isabella had meticulously planned for months, an event she was supposed to co-host. He hadn't even bothered to tell her he wouldn't be attending with her. He simply replaced her. Driven by a desperate, agonizing need to understand, to witness the depth of his cruelty, Isabella had chosen an inconspicuous, flowing black gown, one that artfully concealed her burgeoning bump, and slipped into the gala like a ghost. She'd arranged for a private car, entering through a service entrance, her face hidden behind oversized sunglasses and a silk scarf, a desperate anonymity clinging to her. Now, from her vantage point in a dimly lit alcove near the main ballroom entrance, the reality was a brutal, physical blow. Richard, usually so composed, so careful with his public image, was practically preening. His dark suit was impeccably tailored, his silver hair catching the light, making him look distinguished, powerful. Serena in a shimmering emerald green gown that accentuated her slender figure, hung on his every word, her laughter a melodic counterpoint to the drone of the gala. Isabella felt a primal scream build in her chest, but it was trapped, suffocating, a silent testament to her shock. She watched as a procession of society columnists and photographers descended upon them. Richard, usually media-shy, posed readily, his arm still around Serena's waist. He even leaned in, whispering something in her ear that made her throw her head back and laugh, a dazzling, unburdened sound. Isabella's vision blurred. Was this the man she had loved, built a life with, shared dreams with? This polished stranger, so openly flaunting his infidelity. A waiter, oblivious to the drama unfolding, offered her a tray of champagne. She shook her head, a quiet no, her hand instinctively going to her stomach, protecting the secret life within. The baby. Her baby. How could Richard do this? How could he discard her, their years, their future, with such callous disregard? The weight of her pregnancy suddenly felt immense, a tangible anchor to a future that was now utterly uncertain. She turned away, the opulent room spinning around her, the air thick with perfume and betrayal. She couldn't stay. Every saccharine smile, every flash of light, every whispered compliment directed at the new couple felt like a stab. She needed to escape, to breathe, to figure out what to do next. But as she moved to leave, a familiar voice, sharp and cutting, sliced through the din. "Isabella, is that you?" Her blood ran cold. It was Eleanor Vance, Serena's mother, a woman Isabella had known casually through various charity committees. Eleanor, a formidable socialite with an unwavering gaze, stood barely 10 feet away, a glass of Chardonnay in hand, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. Isabella froze, her heart hammering. The last thing she needed was a confrontation. Eleanor, a woman who had clearly mastered the art of observation, slowly walked towards Isabella, her perfectly manicured hand gesturing vaguely. "I thought I recognized that distinctive black wrap, and you're not usually one for hiding in the shadows, dear. Where's Richard?" Her voice, though superficially polite, carried an undercurrent of something sharp, almost predatory. Isabella's mind raced. Deny everything? Pretend she was just a guest? No, Eleanor was too shrewd. "Good evening, Eleanor," Isabella managed, forcing a polite smile that felt brittle. "Richard is around. I just stepped away for a moment." She gestured vaguely towards the main ballroom, hoping to divert Eleanor's gaze, but Eleanor's eyes, bright and knowing, remained fixed on her. Yes, he certainly is around. With my Serena, I believe. They make quite a striking couple, don't they? A triumphant smirk played on her lips. Such a shame about your delicate condition. It's hard to compete with youth and vibrancy, isn't it? Isabella felt a flush creep up her neck. Delicate condition? Had she guessed? Or was it just a cruel jab at her recent weight gain? She clasped her hands, nails digging into her palms. I'm not sure what you're implying, Eleanor. Eleanor merely chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. Oh, dear Isabella, you're far too intelligent to be playing innocent. Richard and Serena, well, let's just say their connection has been blossoming for quite some time. My daughter is a passionate woman, and Richard, it seems, appreciates that. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her wine, her eyes never leaving Isabella's. You know, Serena has always admired Richard, his drive, his ambition, his ability to provide. The last words were delivered with a pointed emphasis, a thinly veiled reference to Isabella's own status as a trophy wife, a silent accusation of her perceived inadequacy. The words stung, igniting a spark of defiance in Isabella. She wouldn't let Eleanor see her crumble. Our marriage, Eleanor, is not something you understand, and my condition, as you so delicately put it, is my own private affair. Eleanor's smile widened, devoid of warmth. Indeed, just as my daughter's affections for your husband are now very much public. She paused, her gaze sweeping over Isabella, lingering on her slightly rounded middle. You know, Richard is a powerful man, Isabella. He's used to getting what he wants, and what he wants, it seems, is new. Exciting. She leaned in conspiratorially, her voice dropping to a whisper. You really should have kept a closer eye on him. Men like Richard, they need constant stimulation. And a pregnant wife, well, that's hardly stimulating, is it? The sheer audacity of the woman, the brutal frankness of her cruelty, momentarily stunned Isabella into silence. Her heart pounded, a furious drum. How could she, another woman, speak with such venom and disregard for her pain? Excuse me, Isabella finally managed, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. I have no further interest in this conversation. She turned sharply, intending to make a swift exit, but Eleanor's voice followed her, a parting shot. Just remember, Isabella, in this world, the strong survive. And sometimes, dear, that means knowing when to gracefully step aside. Isabella fled, the encounter leaving her shaken and furious. Eleanor's words, though cruel, had laid bare the unspoken power dynamics at play. Richard was the powerful, wealthy man, and Serena, with her youth and rising fame, was the new, exciting acquisition. And Isabella, the discarded wife, was expected to simply fade away. She found herself in the grand foyer, the massive crystal chandeliers sparkling like frozen tears above her. The air felt suffocating. She needed to get out. She pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling, to call her driver. As she waited, she saw Richard and Serena being escorted out a side entrance by his security detail, clearly leaving the gala early. Serena was laughing, her head thrown back, her emerald dress shimmering. Richard looked utterly captivated. A cold, hard resolve began to crystallize within Isabella. This wasn't just about a broken heart. It was about public humiliation, about a betrayal so profound it threatened to erase her very identity. And now, with Eleanor's cruel words ringing in her ears, she realized this wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a public battle for dignity, for respect, for her future, and for the unborn child she carried. She wouldn't just disappear. She wouldn't gracefully step aside. She would fight The days following the gala were a blur of pain, anger, and a desperate sense of strategic planning. Isabella had retreated to a small, unassuming cottage she owned in a quiet coastal town, a place she often escaped to when the pressures of Richard's world became too much. It was a haven, a place where she could shed the expectations of being Mrs. Richard Thorne and simply be Isabella. Now, it was her sanctuary, her war room. She called her best friend Sarah Jenkins, a sharp-witted attorney with a no-nonsense attitude and a heart of gold. Sarah listened patiently, her anger palpable even through the phone line. He did what? Publicly? The absolute nerve of that man. And Eleanor Vance? That viper. Isabella, you cannot let them get away with this. Isabella, pacing the worn wooden floorboards of the cottage, recounted the gala, Eleanor's cutting remarks, and the crushing realization that her marriage was not just over, but annihilated in the most brutal way imaginable. I'm 6 months pregnant, Sarah. He left me, pregnant, for a celebrity. And his mother-in-law-to-be practically told me to disappear. Sarah's voice was firm. Then we make them regret ever thinking you'd disappear. You have rights, Isabella. Significant rights. And a baby changes everything. Together they began to plot. Isabella decided on a complete vanishing act. No dramatic confrontation, no tearful pleas, no public outcry. Not yet. She would simply cease to exist in Richard's world. She closed down her social media, changed her phone number, and instructed her staff to forward all mail to Sarah's office. She liquidated some personal assets, enough to ensure her financial independence for a substantial period, severing any remaining financial ties to Richard's immediate control. The first step was to deliver the news of her pregnancy, not to Richard directly, but through a formal, legal channel. Sarah drafted a letter, stark and unemotional, informing Richard of her pregnancy and her intention to seek full custody and substantial child support, along with an equitable division of their marital assets. It was a declaration of war, delivered with the cold precision of a legal document. Weeks turned into a month. Richard's initial attempts to contact Isabella were sporadic, seemingly perfunctory. He left a few voicemails, all variations of, "Isabella, where are you? We need to talk about the separation agreement." There was no mention of the gala, no apology, no real concern. He sounded annoyed, inconvenienced. Then Sarah delivered the pregnancy letter. The calls stopped for a few days, replaced by increasingly frantic messages from his attorneys. "Mrs. Thorne, Mr. Thorne is extremely distressed by these allegations. He requires immediate contact with you. Mrs. Thorne, this is a very serious matter. We advise you to respond to our client's inquiries without delay." Isabella felt a grim satisfaction. He was finally feeling the consequences of his actions. She remained silent, allowing Sarah to handle all communications. Her focus was entirely on her unborn child, on preparing for their new life, and on building her strength, both physical and emotional. She embraced the quiet solitude of the cottage, walking on the beach, reading, and meticulously planning for motherhood. Sarah relayed the updates. Richard was, predictably, furious. He denied paternity, demanded a DNA test, and accused Isabella of attempting to extort him. His legal team launched a barrage of motions, attempting to locate Isabella to force her appearance. But Isabella, under Sarah's careful guidance, remained elusive, a ghost in the machine of Richard's meticulously ordered life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Isabella sat on the porch of the cottage, a cup of herbal tea warming her hands. She scrolled through an old photo album on her tablet, images of her and Richard from happier times, their wedding day, their honeymoon in Italy, his arm around her at various charity events, smiles frozen in time. A pang of grief, sharp and visceral, twisted in her gut. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the loss of the future she had envisioned, the family she had believed they were building. She touched the screen, a photo of Richard holding her close, whispering something in her ear, her laugh genuine and full of joy. What had gone wrong? When had the warmth in his eyes turned cold? When had she become so insignificant? A sudden push from within her belly, a strong, undeniable kick, brought her back to the present. Her baby. This tiny, growing life was her future, her reason, her strength. Richard's betrayal had stripped her of her past, but it would not define her future. She would rise from the ashes of her shattered marriage, stronger, fiercer, and more determined than ever. Months passed. Isabella gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Lily, a tiny bundle of perfection who instantly filled the void in her heart. Lily's arrival solidified Isabella's resolve. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about protecting her daughter, ensuring she had a stable, loving environment, free from the shadow of her father's public indiscretions. Richard's legal team, still unable to locate Isabella directly, had been forced to deal solely with Sarah. The DNA test had been meticulously arranged through a neutral third party, the results delivered directly to the court. The paternity was undeniable. Richard Thorne was Lily's father. The legal battle escalated, turning into a bitter, drawn-out war. Richard, initially arrogant and dismissive, had become increasingly enraged. The public narrative, carefully managed by his PR team, was that Isabella was a manipulative gold digger attempting to exploit his wealth. He appeared in carefully curated interviews, expressing his concern for Isabella's well-being, while subtly painting her as unstable and unreliable. He and Serena were a constant fixture in the tabloids, a golden couple, their romance blooming under the harsh glare of public scrutiny. But Isabella had a secret weapon: time. Time to heal, time to plan, and time to observe. She devoured every news article, every social media post, every piece of gossip about Richard and Serena. She learned about his business dealings, his public appearances, his new ventures. She began to see patterns, vulnerabilities, and potential weaknesses. One afternoon, as Lily napped in her crib, Isabella sat at her laptop, a determined glint in her eyes. She had always been intelligent, meticulous, and resourceful, skills she had quietly honed managing Richard's household and social calendar, skills he had long underestimated. Now, she was putting them to use. She began compiling a dossier, not just legal documents, but a comprehensive record of Richard's public and private life since their separation. Every photo of him and Serena, every gushing interview, every public display of affection. She cross-referenced financial statements, public filings, and even innocuous social media posts from Serena's inner circle. She noticed inconsistencies, small but significant details that hinted at something deeper than just a romantic affair. One particular detail caught her attention: a series of investments Richard had made in a struggling media company that suddenly, coincidentally, began producing projects starring Serena Vance. Another, the rapid promotion of certain executives within Thorne Enterprises who had personal ties to Serena's family. It was all circumstantial, but it pointed to a pattern of leveraging his corporate power for personal gain and to further Serena's career. Sarah, reviewing Isabella's meticulous findings, raised an eyebrow. "Isabella, this is thorough. Very thorough. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Richard Thorne isn't just a cheating husband, Sarah. I think he's using his company, his influence, to prop up Serena's career, potentially at the expense of his shareholders, or even through questionable means. And I think Eleanor Vance is orchestrating a lot of it." Isabella's voice was calm, devoid of the raw emotion that had once consumed her. It was replaced by a cold, strategic precision. Sarah leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. If we can prove corporate malfeasance, or even just a blatant conflict of interest that impacts the company's value, it changes the entire dynamic of our divorce settlement. It could also make his public image, the one he's so carefully cultivated, utterly crumble. The idea of exposing Richard, not just as a philanderer, but as a man who abused his power, sent a thrill through Isabella. It wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about justice. It was about showing the world the true face of the man who had so casually discarded her and their unborn child. "But how do we prove it?" Sarah asked, tapping a pen against the table. "These are high-level dealings, not easily accessible to an outsider." Isabella smiled, a genuine, almost predatory smile that hadn't graced her lips in months. "Richard may think he knows me, Sarah, but he never truly saw me. He saw a wife, a homemaker, a pretty face to accompany him to galas. He never saw the woman who meticulously managed his life, who had access to every corner of his world, who knew his routines, his confidants, and even his blind spots." She paused, her eyes glinting with a newfound strength. "He made a mistake, Sarah. He underestimated me. He forgot that even in a gilded cage, a lioness still retains her claws." The battle lines were drawn. Isabella, no longer a vanishing wife, was a formidable opponent. With Sarah's legal expertise and Isabella's intimate knowledge of Richard's world, they began to chip away at his carefully constructed facade. Their first move was to formally petition the court for a temporary restraining order, citing Richard's continued harassment and attempts to disparage Isabella in the media. This was a strategic play, forcing Richard's legal team to focus on a new front and giving Isabella a much-needed shield from his relentless public relations attacks. The judge, swayed by the meticulously documented evidence of Richard's public statements and the recent DNA confirmation of Lily's paternity, granted the order. The media, who had been fed a narrative of Isabella as a disgruntled ex-wife, suddenly found themselves with a more complex story. Next, Sarah subpoenaed financial records related to the media company investments and the promotions within Thorn Enterprises. Richard's lawyers fought tooth and nail, claiming these were unrelated to the divorce proceedings. But Sarah argued, persuasively, that Richard's personal conduct and potential misuse of corporate assets had a direct bearing on the division of marital property and his fitness as a parent. The pressure mounted on Richard. His public appearances became less frequent, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a strained smile and darting eyes. Serena, too, seemed to be feeling the heat. Her social media posts, once frequent and carefree, became less ebullient, more curated. The image of the golden couple began to show cracks. One day, an anonymous package arrived at Sarah's office. Inside, a USB drive. On it, a series of encrypted emails and internal company memos. Isabella recognized the sender's alias. It belonged to a junior executive at Thorn Enterprises, a young woman Isabella had always been kind to, a woman who had quietly expressed discomfort with some of Richard's more ethically ambiguous decisions. The emails confirmed Isabella's suspicions. Richard had indeed used company funds and resources to artificially inflate Serena's career, bypassing ethical guidelines and potentially defrauding shareholders. The evidence was damning. It wasn't just a conflict of interest, it bordered on corporate fraud. With this new evidence, Sarah filed an amended petition, alleging Richard's financial misconduct and demanding a comprehensive forensic audit of Thorn Enterprises. This was no longer just a divorce, it was a potential criminal investigation. The news hit the tabloids like a bombshell. Thorn Enterprises under scrutiny. Millionaire mogul accused of fraud in bitter divorce battle. The narrative shifted dramatically. Richard Thorne, once the untouchable tech titan, was now a man facing serious legal and ethical challenges. His carefully crafted image of a benevolent visionary crumbled, replaced by accusations of greed and malfeasance. The public, fickle as always, turned against him. Serena Vance, once admired as the new it girl, found her career stalling. Film offers dwindled, endorsement deals were pulled, and the paparazzi, once clamoring for her photos, now hurled questions about Richard's integrity. Her Instagram comments, once filled with fawning praise, were now rife with accusations of being a home-wrecker and an accomplice. Isabella, watching from her quiet sanctuary, felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. This wasn't the Richard she had married, the man she had loved. This was a man consumed by power and ego, a man who had sacrificed everything, including his integrity, for fleeting gratification. One afternoon her phone rang. It was Richard. His voice, once arrogant and dismissive, was now tinged with desperation. "Isabella, please, we need to talk. This is getting out of control. Your lawyer is destroying my life, my company." Isabella listened, a cold satisfaction settling over her. "You destroyed our life, Richard. And now you're facing the consequences of your own actions. But Lily, think about Lily. Do you want her to grow up with a father facing criminal charges? Think of the scandal." He was playing the victim, trying to manipulate her with their daughter. "You should have thought about Lily, Richard, when you abandoned your pregnant wife and paraded your mistress in front of the entire city. You should have thought about Lily when you compromised your company's ethics. This isn't about me destroying your life, Richard. This is about you facing the truth of who you've become." She hung up, her hand trembling slightly. It was a victory, a significant one. But it was also a stark reminder of the wreckage he had created. The path to redemption for Richard seemed impossible, perhaps even undeserved. But for Isabella, it was just the beginning of reclaiming her own life, on her own terms, with her daughter by her side. The pressure on Richard became unbearable. Shareholders were demanding answers. The board of directors initiated an internal investigation, and the district attorney's office was rumored to be looking into the fraud allegations. Serena Vance, finding her career in tatters and her reputation ruined, finally broke. She contacted Sarah, requesting a private meeting. Isabella, though wary, agreed. The meeting took place in Sarah's office, a stark, modern space that offered no comfort. Serena walked in, a shadow of her former glamorous self. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her designer clothes looked rumpled, and the confident sparkle was gone. She looked afraid. "I need to tell you everything," Serena whispered, her voice hoarse. "I can't do this anymore. He's going to drag me down with him." Isabella watched her, a mix of pity and cold anger churning within her. This woman had stolen her husband, paraded her infidelity, and now she was looking for a way out, a way to save herself. Serena began to speak, a torrent of confession pouring out of her. She admitted that the affair had started almost a year before the gala, cultivated by Eleanor Vance, who saw Richard as a lucrative target for her daughter's career. Eleanor had orchestrated meetings, encouraged Serena to pursue him relentlessly, and even coached her on how to appeal to Richard's ego and desire for novelty. "My mother, she pushed me," Serena explained, tears streaming down her face. "She said it was my big break, that Richard could make me a superstar. She said Isabella was old news, a tired wife who didn't appreciate him." Isabella felt a fresh wave of disgust. Eleanor Vance, the architect of her destruction. Serena then detailed Richard's increasingly desperate attempts to secure roles for her, funneling money from Thorne Enterprises into struggling production companies in exchange for Serena's casting. She described how Richard had instructed her to actively promote his businesses on her social media, blurring ethical lines and creating a false sense of endorsement. She even admitted to faking certain social media posts to make their romance seem more genuine and impactful to the public. He was so caught up in the fantasy, Serena said, wiping her eyes. He loved the idea of the powerful CIO with the beautiful famous actress on his arm. And I loved the attention, the opportunities. But then you disappeared, and the baby news came out, and everything started to fall apart. My career is ruined. I get hate mail every day. He's a monster. Isabella listened, her face impassive. She felt no satisfaction in Serena's misery, only a hollow ache. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about exposing the truth, about holding Richard accountable for his actions, and about finding peace for herself and Lily. "What do you want, Serena?" Sarah asked, her voice calm and professional. "Immunity," Serena pleaded, looking at Isabella. "I'll testify. I'll give you everything. Emails, texts, recordings. I have it all. My mother even bragged about some of their schemes. I just want out. I want to save what's left of my life." Isabella looked at Sarah. "Can we trust her?" Sarah hesitated. "Her testimony, coupled with the evidence you already have, would be devastating to Richard. It would effectively end his career and potentially lead to criminal charges. But we need to verify everything she provides." Isabella finally spoke directly to Serena. "If you lie, if you omit anything, if you try to protect him or your mother, we will not hesitate to expose you as an accomplice. Do you understand?" Serena nodded frantically. "I understand. I promise. I'll tell the truth." The meeting concluded with an agreement. Serena would cooperate fully, providing all evidence and testimony. In return, Sarah would advocate for a lenient plea deal for Serena, provided her information was accurate and led to a successful prosecution of Richard. Leaving Sarah's office, Isabella felt a heavy weight lift from her shoulders. The psychological torment of Richard's betrayal, the public humiliation, the fight for her daughter's future. It all coalesced into a clear path forward. The truth was about to be laid bare, and Richard Thorne would finally face the music. The courtroom was packed, a tangible buzz of anticipation filling the air. Journalists jostled for seats, sketching furiously in notebooks, their lenses glinting. Richard Thorne, flanked by a phalanx of high-powered attorneys, looked significantly older, his face etched with worry. His once impeccable suit now seemed to hang slightly on his frame. Serena Vance, looking pale and subdued, sat separately, her presence a silent testament to the unraveling of Richard's world. Isabella, serene and composed, sat beside Sarah, holding Lily's tiny hand in hers, a symbol of her renewed strength. The trial began, a relentless barrage of evidence. Sarah, a master of courtroom drama, presented the meticulously compiled dossier. Financial records flashed across the large screen, highlighting the suspicious investments and the inflated budgets for projects starring Serena. Internal emails were read aloud, revealing Richard's instructions to manipulate corporate resources for personal gain. Then came Serena's testimony. She recounted the affair with chilling detail, her voice cracking as she confessed to her part in the deception. She provided recordings of conversations with Richard, where he openly discussed leveraging his company to boost her career, and even detailed some of Eleanor Vance's conniving plans. Eleanor, observing from the gallery, looked livid, her face a mask of fury. Richard's lawyers tried to discredit Serena, painting her as a jilted lover seeking revenge, but her testimony was corroborated by the overwhelming documentary evidence. They also tried to portray Isabella as a vengeful ex-wife, but Sarah countered with a powerful narrative of a woman abandoned, publicly humiliated, and forced to fight for her dignity and her child's future. Isabella took the stand, her voice clear and steady. She spoke of her marriage, her love for Richard, and the crushing betrayal at the gala. She spoke of her pregnancy, her fear, and her determination to protect Lily. She showed photos of Lily, healthy and beautiful, her birth certificate clearly listing Richard as the father. Her testimony was devoid of theatrics, just a quiet, dignified telling of her truth. Under cross-examination, Richard's attorney tried to corner her, questioning her motives, her financial independence. But Isabella, prepared by Sarah, remained calm, answering each question with unflappable logic and grace. The pivotal moment came when Sarah called Richard Thorne to the stand. He was arrogant at first, denying the allegations, attempting to deflect blame. But under Sarah's relentless questioning, the cracks in his composure began to show. She presented him with his own emails, his own financial records, his own words from the recordings Serena had provided. "Mr. Thorne," Sarah's voice rang through the courtroom, "isn't it true that you knowingly used Thorne Enterprises funds to advance Miss Vance's acting career, thereby committing a blatant conflict of interest and potentially defrauding your shareholders?" Richard stammered, his face turning beet red. I was supporting her career. She's a talented actress. At the expense of your company's integrity? At the expense of your marital vows? At the expense of your reputation? Sarah pressed, her voice unwavering. "And isn't it true that you abandoned your pregnant wife, Mrs. Thorne, at the very same time you were publicly flaunting Miss Vance, causing her immense emotional distress and humiliation?" Richard looked at Isabella, really looked at her, for the first time in months. His eyes, once dismissive, now held a flicker of something akin to shame, or perhaps just fear of consequences. He mumbled, I made mistakes." "Mistakes, Mr. Thorne," Sarah countered, "or calculated choices that benefited you and Miss Vance at the cost of everyone else." The weight of the evidence, the relentless questioning, and the undeniable truth of his actions finally broke him. Richard Thorne, the formidable tech mogul, crumbled on the stand. He admitted to the affair, to the misuse of company funds, to his callous treatment of Isabella. He confessed to prioritizing his ego and his new relationship over his responsibilities as a husband, a father, and a CEO. The courtroom erupted in gasps and whispers. The judge, after a tense silence, called for a recess. Isabella felt a profound sense of closure. The truth was out. The lies were exposed. Richard's empire, built on ambition and now stained by deceit, was crumbling. It wasn't a triumphant feeling, but a quiet, solemn one. The battle had been long and arduous, but justice, it seemed, was finally within reach. The aftermath of the trial was swift and decisive. Richard Thorne faced multiple civil lawsuits from shareholders and was forced to resign as CEO of Thorne Enterprises. He was hit with substantial fines and community service, and his public image was irreparably damaged. His fortune, once seemingly limitless, was significantly diminished by legal fees and settlements. Eleanor Vance, implicated in Serena's testimony, faced her own legal troubles and public condemnation, her social standing in tatters. Serena, thanks to her cooperation, received a lighter sentence and began the difficult process of rebuilding her life and career, far away from the spotlight. Isabella, on the other hand, emerged from the wreckage with her dignity intact, her reputation restored, and her future shining brightly. The court granted her full custody of Lily, with Richard having supervised visitation rights, a testament to his past actions and the need to protect their daughter. The divorce settlement was substantial, ensuring Isabella and Lily's financial security for life. But more than the financial gains, Isabella gained something invaluable: her self-worth. She had faced betrayal, humiliation, and a powerful adversary, and she had not only survived, but thrived. She had found her voice, asserted her strength, and fought for justice. She sold the sprawling mansion she had once shared with Richard, severing the last physical tie to her past life. With the proceeds and a portion of her settlement, she bought a beautiful, sun-drenched home in a vibrant, family-friendly neighborhood, far from the whispers of high society. Her relationship with Sarah deepened into an unbreakable bond. Sarah became not just her lawyer, but her closest confidant, her chosen family. One sunny afternoon, Isabella sat on the porch swing of her new home, Lily giggling in her lap. The little girl, now a boisterous toddler with Richard's dark hair, and Isabella's bright, inquisitive eyes, pointed at a butterfly flitting by. "Mama, Fluffy!" Isabella hugged her daughter tightly, a wave of profound love washing over her. This was her redemption. This was her deeply satisfying conclusion. She had built a new life, a life filled with genuine love, peace, and authenticity. She was no longer Mrs. Richard Thorne, the abandoned wife. She was Isabella, a strong, resilient mother, charting her own course. She thought of the gala, the night her world had shattered. She thought of the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, but she also thought of the strength it had ignited within her, the courage it had given her to fight, and the path it had forged towards this beautiful, new beginning. Richard occasionally saw Lily during supervised visits. He was a quieter man now, humbled and subdued. There was no animosity between them, just a quiet, almost sad understanding. He had lost everything that truly mattered, and Isabella, by losing him, had gained her true self. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over her new home, Isabella smiled. Her life was far from perfect, but it was real. It was hers, and it was just beginning. She had walked through fire and emerged stronger, more whole, and profoundly grateful for the lessons learned and the love found. If you found Isabella's journey inspiring, if her courage resonated with your own experiences of overcoming adversity, please like this story, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more tales of resilience and empowerment. Your support helps us bring these powerful stories to life. Thank you for watching.